Welcome once again to another exciting episode of The Traveling Troubadour, the podcast that follows the lives of musicians who've successfully toured around the world, playing the music everyone knows and loves. I'm your host, Jason Perno, and our next guest comes from England. His name is Spence Cater. Spence, thanks for coming on the show. It's great to have you here. Why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and how you first got into music?
Hi, Jason. Well, thanks for having me on the show. Thanks for asking me. It's great stuff you're doing here. So a bit about myself. So in terms of music, I guess I was into music at a very, very early age. I was into listening to music. I had a real passion for music. And towards the end of school, I started playing in bands. I started off playing drums. And Martin Gilks, who's now sadly passed away, he was the drummer of the Wonder Stuff. His dad used to work with my dad, and my dad bought Martin Gilks his first drum kit for my first drum kit. So I didn't realise this till afterward. And just messing about, really, I played drums in a cover band called Tricky Dicky. I was like 16, and the rest of the guys were like hairy-arsed blokes, from 30, 35 upwards, rockers, and I was the drummer. I played the drums for them. It was a very weird, it must have looked very odd. Then I started moving towards the front of the stage. I picked up a guitar, I started learning some chords, and then I started playing my own stuff, playing open mics. And then began hosting my own open mics, because I figured that was a good way of getting gigs. Instead of waiting for someone else to choose you for your open mic, you just host your own and get paid. So that was the first sort of exposure to live music and getting paid for it. And I did pretty much everything. I had a partner at the time, like a male music partner, not a lover. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. But so he would help out, but I would end up doing all the donkey work. Basically, I was the one who designed all the flyers, and we'd go out. This is, way before the internet, way before MySpace, all of that stuff. So it was all by hand, right? You printed out flyers, got them photocopied as cheap as you could, and then just go out and just hand them hand to hand.
Did you make a lot of money doing this type of work?
At the time, I was making sort of 80 quid, 60, 80 quid, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. But at the time, I was a big drinker, And so I'd get paid in beer as well, So I'd get paid cash, and they'd just give me a free tab all night. So that, for me, that was, if I'd have took all that money in cash, as I said, in beer, then I would have been getting paid quite highly.
That I believe. Yeah, I think it's musicians like you that they started creating rules at two beers per night or per gig.
Yeah, I ruined it for everyone. So that's how I started off, really. I started off with that, and then through that, how it goes. You meet people, and so I started putting on these nights. And at one point, there was like in Wolverhampton. This is in the city of Wolverhampton, by the way. This is where I didn't grow up there, but this is the kind of the next biggest town from where I grew up. And there was quite a scene there at one point. There's a big university there, there's a big art department there, the big music department. So we were putting gigs on at the Student Union, we were putting gigs on at the local pub. I was doing radio at the time. We did a radio show called Naked Ambition, which was dedicated entirely to unsigned artists. And unsigned music then, was shit. Basically, it's pretty dire because people didn't have the money to go into the studio. You know what I mean? You still had to go in the studio those days. You still had to put CDs out and stuff like that. So it was only people who had who could put some money together, who could produce anything decent. Everything else the quality wasn't great. But we that didn't stop us. We got people in, do live sessions and all that kind of stuff. We had an absolute ball. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it was very different back then because nowadays everybody seems to have a home setup.
Yeah,
or home studio.
Totally. Yeah, it looks like you've got one there.
Yeah. I probably spent the last 30 years putting this together, one piece of gear at a time.
Yeah, and that's great, and that's what you had to do. But now, you can record something half decent on a Mac, right? GarageBand, and a mic, you're kind of there. But
it's a totally different world.
Yeah, that wasn't there then. But so that was how I got started, and then I got through into that. There's so many stories I could go into and sidelines I could go into, but let's keep it on the,
Well,
on the straight and narrow.
one of the stories that I'm most interested in is that you got into busking. How did that start?
So what happened was I was working. So I was doing the day job. I was a teacher, right? I was working in colleges and stuff, and I went into the private sector.
What did you teach?
And I taught what they call now basic skills to 16 to 18-year-olds. And a lot of the people I worked with were, what they call politely furthest from the job market. In other words, they've got issues, Jason. They've got issues and they need help. Anyway, so long story short, I got made redundant 2 or 3 times on the trot, and I thought, I'm not going back into this now. I need to do something else. I had my guitar with me. I had no intention of busking that day, but for some reason, somebody, before I knew it, I was bringing my guitar home from the repairs. Before I knew it, I'd unzipped it, I'd got it out, and put the case down on the floor like I'd seen other buskers do, and I just started playing. I didn't know any covers. I just started playing my own stuff.
Where was this?
And this is in Birmingham, the second biggest city in England. The fear that I had before that of ever doing that was the fear that, I'm going to get arrested. People are going to laugh at me. I'm going to get attacked. All these kind of negative stuff that was coming in. And, nothing bad happened. People gave me some money. And the first, they call it the drop, right? The first drop you get, that was it. I was like, wow, this works. If somebody's prepared to throw me a quid for me playing like a bad version of my own song that no one's ever heard before, then if I, played a song that maybe they had heard before and played it a bit better, then maybe that's worth 2 quid or 3 quid.
I was just going to ask you that. When you do original music versus cover music, what did you find out there, busking?
What I found was if I'm just playing a guitar, no amplification, and I've got a little case, and I'm playing my own stuff, people will give you money for that. How much? It really depends on a lot of things, where you are, the time of day, the time of year. I made more money once I, A, started playing covers, and B, amplified myself, because it's very easy to get mistaken for a vagrant, homeless person if you're just standing there playing just a guitar with no amplification.
Does that happen sometimes? Do you have somebody there who's got an instrument and they just start playing and not very well, and they're just hoping that somebody will drop some money in?
And people do that, right? People do that as a have no intention of playing. That they are homeless, right? And they'll, got 2 strings on the guitar. It's not even tuned, and they're just playing like that just so they can just say, well, I'm busking, I'm not begging. So it's a very, and some people, even if you're playing quite well, even when I progressed, about 6 months later, I eventually kind of invested in some gear. I got the battery powered amp, and I got a mic, and I got a proper hard case, and I got a set. I was starting to build it up. And even then, people, I've got CDs for sale. People come up and say, oh, I'll give you some money, but are you homeless? Are you just going to spend it on beer?
So there's like an assumption there. That's
very
weird.
And I say, well, actually, even if you give me money, you're going to spend money on beer. Why? Not that I was drinking at the time, but it's there's such a stereotype, and people still have that stigma.
Were you able to make good money busking? I mean, what's the bottom line? Yes. Yeah.
And again, this is so dependent on lots of things, right? The best there was a place called Stratford-upon-Avon, which is in the West Midlands, the home of Shakespeare. So tourists come from busloads of Japanese tourists, just wandering around the place. And so loads of, people, you're kind of a tourist attraction.
What would you say was one of the key things about engaging with the audience in order to get them to basically stay and listen and tip?
Great question. I think it's just being present, so you're playing and not just going through the motions kind of thing. You're kind of responding to what's going on. So people walking past, you making eye contact, little jokes here and there, asking for requests, talking to people directly, because they're sitting around you, You've got a captive audience in a way, so you engage them. That's the way I did it, really.
I spoke to Neil Brophy. I don't know if you've watched his interview.
I did. Great interview. Yeah.
Yeah. and he talked about the eye contact for him when he was busking. He did it for 2 years in Perth, and he said that was what he learned. As soon as he got their eyes meeting his, then he knew that he had a better chance.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And kids, man. The kids get it. You know, if you got a family, you got 2 little kids and a family. The kids will always come to you like bees to a flower, right? Because they're intrigued and they're like, "Whoa, they want to come over." And of course, once the kids are coming over, the parents are coming over, and the kids are not going to go away without giving you some money, right? So you entertain the kids. You play a kids song. You get them. You get the kids coming in, and of course, when the kids are there and the families come, it's about getting a crowd, right? And it's quite hard sometimes when you're static and you're playing, behind a microphone. It's quite hard. If you got a wireless, then it's a bit easier because you can integrate more. So there's 2 types of shows. What I'm trying to say, there's what they call the circle show, which is what if you go to Covent Garden in London, that's what they do. It's like roll up, getting people in and getting a little crowd going. Yeah, that's like a circle show, and you do the hat at the end, and that's when you get the money at the end. You get tips all the way through. What I was doing was more of like your kind of flow show was what I call it. So people just walk in and out. You try and capture a crowd and you try and keep it, but they're only going to stay 10, 20 minutes at the most.
Even when you're playing in other venues, actual contracted venues that are family friendly, I've been playing on cruise ships, for example, and I've seen kids coming up to me while I was playing on a cruise ship. And the funniest thing, I remember I was playing on a cruise ship that sailed between Stockholm and Finland. And sometimes you would get like, I don't know if you call them like gypsies or people from Romania that were gypsies or Bulgaria and so on. And I just remember that this little girl, she must have been not more than 2 years old. She came right up to me. I actually got it on tape. It's funny. She comes up to me while I'm playing a song, and she's just sitting there listening, and then she just raises her middle finger, 2 years old, right at me. And I'm thinking, whoa, where did this kid get their manners? And then I saw the mom was one of the gypsies. It's definitely a totally different breed of people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, that wouldn't happen in Stratford-upon-Avon.
No, I don't think so. So what's the name of your book again?
The book is Busking for Beginners. There you go.
Busking for it looks really fascinating. I'd actually like to pick up a copy myself.
Everything that you need to know. If you've never done it before, and somebody like you, it's perfect for you, Jason, because I heard that you haven't busked before, right? You're a performer. You're good at what you do. You can entertain a crowd. You've got the chops. This book is assuming that you've got all those things already. This isn't like Busking for Beginners, right? I can't play a note. I'm just going to go and, it's not going to work, right? You've got to have a level of skill that means people are going to give you some money, not just out of pity, but for like.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of courage to get out there in front of
it does.
In the middle of an open space and just start getting people's attention. I have to say, I was spoiled in many ways because I worked mainly with contracted gigs, and for the first number of years before the Brophy circuit, I was playing in these other gigs, another circuit where you can pretty much play whatever you wanted. And if you were a good performer and you were appreciated by people, and the entertainer in me had to develop over time. And I still never became, I guess you could say, a great quote unquote entertainer. I was always relying mostly on my skills as a singer and as a guitar player and knowing the right repertoire and so on. But being a great entertainer, that's a special gift. And probably one of the reasons why I never really wanted to do busking myself, because it's, to me, sounds very nerve-wracking. So I admire anybody who has the courage to go out there and somebody who can make money on top of that as well. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I saw, I saw it very much as an apprenticeship.
Right.
You had 2 hour slots on each pitch, and there was only 2 pitches there that were really good. The one I mentioned earlier on the front and the one in the high street. Now, I used to get there, and they were much coveted, so you'd have to fight for them, literally. Sometimes.
So these were assigned slots. You had to be part of some sort of community where you
designated spots. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, I'm going to go to I'm off to Stratford-upon-Avon, I'm going to bus there, good luck. But Yeah, so you'll be greeted by a town. I mean, this is when I was doing it. This is like 5-6 years ago, maybe more. And a town warden would come along and say, if they were new, if you were new, because obviously they knew all the buskers there. If you were a new face, they'd come up to you and they're all very polite. There was nothing threatening about it. They'd just say, look, welcome, and here's a little map. These are the areas you need to play, and it's it's a 2-hour waiting list, a 2-hour playtime, and that's it. And it kind of regulates itself after that, because all the buskers that are there kind of know the score. It's this kind of, they know, you don't take the piss. You play your 2 hours and you wait. And if you're there and somebody else has got some gear there and that they want to take a piss, you look after the gear or you help. Everyone helps each other out a bit. But there's some people who didn't, and some people who just tried to occupy the spots, and it got nasty. Because it's basically stopping you earning money. If somebody's trying to hog a spot and it's like, hold on a minute, I could be earning like 200-300 quid here and you're stopping me doing it. And of course, tempers are going to get frayed, right? So it taught me anyway. It taught me a lot about the law. It taught me a lot about standing up for yourself, and about sort of negotiating, Yeah. And of course, about entertaining, about stamina, because you can be, some places don't have time limits. Stratford in London, for example, didn't have a time limit. You could be there all day, play 4 or 5 hours straight.
Now, in addition to your book, you also, I see, you started an online course as well.
So The Prosperous Musician is the website. So if you go on there, you'll see the book. You can purchase the book from there. And from there's also a little course that accompanies the book. And on that, if you are interested in the book and the course, I'm also available for a call, so I can talk you through it.
Consultation.
You want to get started? Consultation, yeah, because like you say, we could fill up 2 hours easily just talking about busking. So if that's what you want to do, I'm happy to guide you through it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's a really fascinating topic, and I would like to just move on a little bit because I have so many other questions here. So, So you started off, you had a very colorful life, starting out as a musician and getting involved in the music business at a young age and moving on to the busking. And I see you've also played as well in Belgium.
That's right.
Were you busking there as well?
Yeah. So where I busked, that was the other thing, I suppose, of like, that was the progression. It was like, well, I was playing in Birmingham, which is a big city. So I already had a lot of pitches, and Stratford, these great places to busk. But then I heard you get to meet other buskers, like you do. You meet with the Troubadours and they tell you something, it blows your mind. It's like, oh yeah, I've just played around Europe. This guy just said, yeah, I've just come back. I've just played all around Europe. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I just went, okay, yeah, why didn't I think of that? So I didn't go all the way around Europe, but I went to Belgium as a start. Did a little mini tour of Belgium, which was fantastic. It's a great place to busk. And I've played in New York. I busked on the subways in New York.
Yeah, I've been there. I've seen that. I mean, because I'm from New York, so I've been there. Many times. I went to audio engineering school there in Union Square in New York, and you go underneath the subway there, and you can see they had some amazing performers. Amazing.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Like in many other places, you have to be part of an association to get in and apply for spots. It's like a job that people compete for, slots that you're trying to get into. And it's not the same where you can just stand wherever you want and start playing. There's a whole procedure you have to follow to get in to that circuit.
That's right. Same with the London Underground. You have to do that as well. You have to audition. The New York subway, I didn't know you had to audition, right? So I just had my guitar. I didn't take any amplification, and I wasn't there just to busk. By the way, this was like another trip. But what I did was I went on the 40-second shuttle, right? So one-stop shuttle that goes. It's just one stop. It's 90 seconds. The S train, I think they call it. And so I sat on there, and it was the reason why I did that was because it was absolutely baking hot. It was like 30, 35 degrees, absolutely sweltering. But down in there, it seemed to be cooler. So I sat on this little train that just went one stop backwards and forwards. And I worked out I could play a little kind of mini version of Three Little Birds and a little mini version of Folsom Prison Blues. I hear that train coming. It's rolling.
Yeah. Between stops.
Yeah. So the doors would shut. I'd start playing, and then just as I'd finish the song, the train had stopped and the doors would open. They'd get off and people would come in. People would tip me. People would come back in, and the same thing, backwards and forwards for a few hours. But the amazing thing that happened there, and this has happened quite a few times in my, certainly through busking, was I was playing Three Little Birds. Don't worry about a thing, and everyone's getting, they're all stressed out and tired, and I started playing that, and it stopped the other side, and as people were piling out, the guy came over and stood by me and said, "You know what?" He says, "Hey, I'm not even going to try and do the accent. I won't embarrass myself." But he was a New Yorker, right?
Yeah.
He said, if you can imagine him saying in a New York accent, right? He said, "You know what, man? You know what? I just heard you playing that, and I've just been made redundant today. They just told us, my job's finished."
Yeah.
And he said, "Swear to God, man, I was feeling suicidal.
Wow.
I was feeling suicidal, and I heard you play that song. You know what? I've got some hope." So thanks, man. And he gave me some money, and that happened twice that day. Not as dramatic as that, but this woman said, "I was feeling really down, and he played that, and he really cheered me up." But this guy, he was genuine. When you can just see it with somebody, he was like really like still processing it, kind of thing. But I was like, that's just two people who actually made the effort to come and say something. You don't know how many of those people throughout the day didn't come up and say something, but it still had an effect. And I've been affected by, street performers and stuff. You hear something and I might not rush over and tell them, but,
That's the interesting thing about New York as well, is that you never know if you're going to piss somebody off or you're going to get a compliment. It can go either way, because I've had very negative experiences as well in New York, where people will sometimes, maybe I'm just sitting by myself playing music and somebody will say, "Shut up," So it depends on who's walking by and what the mood is. But it's really nice, though, when you get these kind of compliments, especially when it becomes, your song becomes a suicide prevention. So out of all the places that you've played and busked, do you have a specific country or place that really stood out as your favorite?
This is a top tip, right? This isn't in the book. I'm going to give you this for free. This is something that actually it's not a secret. It's Brophy did it first, but
go for it. Yeah,
this is what he's got, a busker's brain. You see, Brophy has. This is why you came up with it first. So the Courtyard Concerts, right? So everyone's locked down, particularly here, and I suppose where you are as well. You'll know there's loads of these apartment blocks, and they'll have a courtyard in the middle. And so when the COVID first struck and everyone was locked down and no one was going out and everyone was scared, then it was coming up to the weather was getting okay. So what I do is get my gear, because I live in one of these apartment blocks, right? It's huge,
right?
And they've got a courtyard in the middle. So I just got my gear out and I just started playing. And I did a little set, 15 minutes. I put my Vips sign out, nice and big, so people could see it from the balconies. Everyone came out on the balcony. It was like playing a stadium, man. It's like everybody came out.
Yeah.
And I was playing away. I did this little set. And there was one guy, I don't know what he said in Norway. He was probably, "Shut the fuck up,"
Yeah, he was like one of those "get off my lawn" kind of guys.
Yeah, but I just said, "Look, man, I'm playing for 15 minutes. I'll be gone," and that was it. And he shut up. But that gig, that was cool because it was where I lived, so it was a big risk for me to play. Because if it bombed, I'd have had to move out of it. I would have had to walk around with a hood on, for a few months.
Were people mobile paying you then?
Yeah, that was the thing, like with the Vips. And it's the first time I'd used Vips, really. I'd only just got my phone. I'd just got everything sorted. Yeah. I was still kind of getting settled in. So I'd never really used it before. Yeah. And a few people gave me some paper money, some folding stuff, but generally it was people on the balcony. So I played this set, everyone was going, really great sort of reaction to it. And I finished and I was like, you hyped, right, adrenalized, and I was like, that went really well. I looked at the phone and I just saw like 50 kroner. I'm like, I thought I'd go a bit more than that, That's like
especially in Norway.
pounds.
Can't even buy a hamburger for that.
Yeah. So I thought, well, okay. I thought it was an experiment. I was telling myself that it's fine, it's where I'm at. And then what I didn't realise was that was the last tip of about 28 tips.
Oh, wow.
So I scrolled down, it's like 50 krona, 100 krona, 200 krona, 50 krona. It's just a long list of tips. And I was just like, 15 minutes. It worked out about I think it was about £220, something like that, for 15 minutes. That was insane. And that happened a few times. I've tried it in different places. And not only that, because you've got the VIPs, you've got their message, right? So I sent everyone a message back saying, thank you so much, bro. So I've got people saying, "Oh, come back," and so you've got like a list. You built your fan base as well as getting a contactable fan base.
That's a really clever way. Yeah, to get people to get into your music. Speaking of Norway, how did you end up there?
Like most people, I think here, it's my partner came here. She had a job. She got a proper job here,
right?
And so I followed. I came with her, and that was it. Really. That's how we ended up here. So
you didn't know anything about the Norway music scene beforehand?
Nothing at all. And
well, I think it's a pleasure then to tell you that if you haven't already figured that out, I've done now. I think you're my 5th interview, and all 4 interviews beforehand are all pointing towards Norway as probably the best place in Europe, maybe even the world, to make money as a musician.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That is really interesting.
You just, by the luck of the draw, ended up in the right country. What do you most prefer about this lifestyle?
What I do like about it is, especially being here in Norway for the first time, just getting to see places, just traveling around, getting to see different places.
Did you have a favorite gig in Norway?
The one that stands out for me most is the most recent one was Christian Sand, which was Halloween Christian Sands. And the Friday night was dead, right?
Yeah.
Dead as disco. And then the Saturday night, completely different story. Everyone was out, people were in fancy dress. It was like a kind of, I wouldn't say go as far as New Year's Eve kind of vibe, but it was really, it was going off. And it was one of those nights, I don't know if you've had this, usually, most nights I'm consistent, I can play and sound the same most nights. But that night, I don't know whether it was the adrenaline or the energy, I was getting the love off the crowd. My voice just it felt like I had an extra note, I had extra range. I was kind of like, the guitar sounded good. Everything was just like, I'm on fire.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the night, you do the encore and people who weren't going for more. And so I did an encore and I did one and then I kind of finished. And then this guy came up to me and said, we want you to play, we have a table over there, we want you to play longer, we'll pay you. And I was like, well, I'm fine with that, but I don't know if the manager's okay with that, because he's got to. Anyway, I spoke to Jens, the manager, and he was just like, fine, it's up to you. If you want to play, you carry on. So I was like, okay. He named the price. I didn't say a price. And he said, we'll give you 3,000 krona, right? Play for an hour. Like, done. Done. I ended up playing for an hour and a half because it just went off and on. You're just going on and on and on. But that was like one of those. I don't know if you've ever seen. I might be being a bit dramatic now, but if you've seen the Elton John film, the
Rocket Man,
the biopic, Rocket Man. That beginning when he's playing his first gig in is it CBGB's, and he's kind of floating and the whole crowd's floating. It's that kind of. It felt like that. It was that kind of feeling of like, I can't do anything wrong here. You know what I mean? It's just got them all in the palm of your hand, and just having that, being validated, somebody actually wanting to pay you quite well for it. That was like one of the nights. And then, of course, the next week, it's Friday night, you're playing to 3 people.
Yeah, it can definitely be different from night to night. Yeah. But you're definitely in the right country, I think, to be pulling those kind of tips. The only other place I could see where I would get that kind of money from the audience would be in Switzerland. You just have to go to where the money is. In Norway, everybody has money because of the oil, but Switzerland, they're all pretty wealthy out there. Do you have any tips for other musicians who might want to get into this line of work?
Yes. There are loads of tips, Jason. I mean, there's practical tips like equipment wise. For me, you just get two of everything. So, and I started doing that when I was busking as well and doing the gigs and stuff. You need two guitars, need two leads, just two of everything, right? Because one of them's going to go, and you always need a backup. So I'd suggest that just as a practical issue. For me, I think I've made a lot of sacrifices, for this because, your weekends are gone. If you're in a partnership, it's really hard on your partnership. You need a really understanding partner who's going to support you, because if you're, like with these gigs, I'm gone like Friday morning. If you, Christian Sons, for example, here, I'm gone like from Friday morning till Sunday night. And so that can be hard if it's every week. So, yeah, I think for me, it's looking after you because I'm a bit older, so you have to look after yourself,
I think it's really fascinating hearing about your stories busking, especially through Belgium and New York and in your hometown back in England. But do you have any funny stories? Anything that sticks out in your mind over the years? I'm sure you have a ton of stories, but one that you would like to share?
I got a shit ton of stories, Jason. And again, I'm setting this up as a funny story. It might not be to you, but anyway, it amused me anyway. So the busking, right? I'll go back to the busking. So I would, Stratford-upon-Avon, Birmingham to Stratford-upon-Avon is about an hour on the train. That's what we used to do. I used to do. And all the other buskers who were going from Birmingham do it, right? So we'd get on the train. And the high street, in my opinion anyway, I think other people's opinion, the high street in Stratford was great in the morning. And then in the afternoon by the river, that was the great pitch to have in the afternoon. So that's what I tried to do. Get there early, get the morning pitch, make the money there, and then have lunch and then go and play in the afternoon or longer, in the summer. So that was the day. So other buskers were getting wise to this, that's where the money is. So we're getting 8 o'clock train, which is, it's early for a musician, right? And it was funny because there were other buskers that did it, but there was these two kids. They were kids to me. That's being patronising, but they were very young. They were called the Fidgets, and they were like this duo. They were very good. Anyway, they were all polite and stuff, and we'd be on the train and we'd exchange pleasantries. But we knew getting nearer and nearer that, we'd get off the train and we'd be half a mile to the busking's pitch, the first one, in the high street. So we'd be walking like really fast, pretending we're not caring about if we get there or not, playing it cool, but walking really fast, with this gear and stuff. And then eventually we'd get about 200 yards away. And then one of us would, I'd start running to get there quick, and then they'd start running, and then and then we kind of know that it's a race. We got to get there, and then we're both running, and then one of us, sometimes I'd get there quicker, but oftentimes, sometimes it'd be neck and neck, and that happened with another busker. We're all right, walking down the street, and suddenly like, run! He's made a run. It's like being in a peloton in the Tour de France. The one breaks for it, and the other one's. It was hilarious, but after a while, all that pretense went. As soon as the train door opened, you just leg it off the train to like run the whole half a mile. But what I did was, this was the thing, because I thought I'm never going to beat these kids because A, they had less equipment than me, and B, they were a lot quicker than me. So I just thought, okay, think about this tactically. So I just got the earlier train. I was there at 6 o'clock. The sun was just coming up. I was there. There's no one about, and I just set up. They come running around the corner, and I'd already be set up there. I'll be finished in about 2 hours. All right. That's
funny because, I mean, they might have been younger and faster, but you had some wisdom.
Being a busker, that's what you're always. It's like a survival thing. You know what I mean? You're always thinking of the next, where the best location is, and it's just so many things to be aware of. It really teaches you to be hungry.
Listen, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Once again, your book, Busking for Beginners, is available Where can people pick that up? Is that Amazon or?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon. You can buy the paperback. You can order a paperback on there, or you can just get it for your Kindle. There's also, if you go to The Prosperous Musician, you'll see it there and you can get it there. You can also, there's a course on there as well. And as I said, if you email me, info@spencecatermusic.com or at theprosperousmusician@gmail.com, if you want some more, I'm happy to do consultation. I'm happy to talk to you. As you know, I'll talk all day about busking. So if you want some help, you want to get started, I suggest getting the book as a hard copy you can just refer back to, and I'm happy to talk you through your first busking experience.
Excellent. And one last thing, before we close the show, we're going to take you out with one of your original songs.
One Clean Year of Wonder is it's a very personal song about my journey from being a hopeless addict to being not an addict, just a hopeless person, a hopeful person. And the title came from there's a band called The Fall, and Mark E. Smith was the lead singer of The Fall. He's dead now, but his book autobiography is called Renegade. I highly recommend it. And one of the lines in the book, he was talking about he just mentioned one clean year of wonder. And for some reason, I don't know if you get this, Jason, when you're writing songs, some titles and just things just leap out at you and suddenly inspire you.
Yeah.
And that line did for me. And so I based the song around that title. And it's got a lovely animated video by a guy called King Man Cheng, who's a beautiful. He's done lots of video animations, and I highly recommend him if you're looking for animations for your music videos. Check him out.
And that is a wrap for this week's podcast. I want to thank once again our guest Spence Cater for coming on the show to share his journey with us. If you liked what you heard and you want to learn more, please go to Amazon and pick up your copy of Troubadour, A Musician's Guide to Touring Europe as a Cover Artist. I'm going to take you out now with an original song from Spence. It's called One Clean Year of Wonder. Thanks again, and see you next time.
One clean year of wonder, it could be the best I've ever known. At times I felt I was going under, but now I see how much I've grown. So I pray and I wait, leave it up to fate as I go on, as I go on. One clean year of wonder, and I hope it can be more. I'd love to hear the thunder of you knocking on my door. So I pray and I wait, I hope it's not too late as I go on, as I go on. I think of all the years I've wasted doing things I didn't need to do, but something better has replaced it, something meaningful and true. One clean year of wonder, I never thought it would happen to me. All my pain and all my hunger are replaced with serenity. So I pray and I wait. As I go on, as I go on.